now we're joined by Mike Snyder, who is the Orioles Director of Pro Scouting. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the past couple Rule 5 drafts have been particularly interesting for the Orioles. And then you have last year where you have the lockout, you don't have the Rule 5 draft, and unfortunately are not able to take the #1 overall pick in that Rule 5 draft. But you know, any draft, any Rule 5 draft, you could lose talent just as much as you could gain talent. Do you feel like not having a Rule 5 draft last year made the Orioles a little bit more lucky or unlucky that they weren't able to get anybody, but also weren't able to lose anybody?
Yeah, it is a event in the off-season calendar that we look forward to every year. It's kind of a tradition in Baltimore of taking, if not one, sometimes more than one player in the Rule 5. As you pointed out, we did have the #1 overall pick, so from that standpoint, we were a little upset not to have that opportunity to make that selection. On the other hand, there were players that we were sweating. Every year, you have to make I'd say a calculated risk, take a calculated risk on the chances that a player gets selected and that player gets kept by the other team, while also not being too protective and then perhaps foregoing other opportunities elsewhere. So the fact that we had the #1 overall pick and maybe another pick after that, that was a little hard to lose. But at the same time, you know, as you point out, there might have been players who might have lost. And looking back at this point, it's hard to tell around the league the impacts that might have had.
And you guys have focused a lot on pitchers the last couple Rule 5 drafts. You've taken 4 pitchers in the last 2 Rule 5 drafts that have actually occurred. What is it about pitchers that makes them more attractive in a Rule 5 draft? And is there anything in particular that you look for or that the Orioles front office looks for in a Rule 5 draft eligible pitcher?
Yeah, with pitchers, there's probably a little bit more variability. So when you select a player in December, you have to bake in that you don't know exactly what that player is going to look like even a couple months later. So we try to target players with a number of good traits, with a number of pitches and strike throwing ability, performance at the upper levels. I think in previous years we may have looked a little bit more trying to find length, trying to find strike throwers, trying to fill out staff our roster with quality players. And this year, what might be a little bit different, we're still very much looking for that. I think we're also a little bit more open to power shorter relievers, position players across the board. The last 4 we've made have been on the pitching end. I do think they've shared some of those traits. And the 2 position players before that, guys who played up the middle, ability defensively, ability offensively. But I would not say it's a science. We are trying to find the best player to help our team next year and into the future. Hopefully we've done that. Hopefully we continue to do that.
And when it comes to protecting players from the Rule 5 draft, you guys protected 5 players this year, 6 players last year. A lot of teams have been leaving some of the more highly ranked prospects exposed to the Rule 5 draft, highly ranked according to media outlets, outside outlets, as opposed to the teams. Why do you think that is? And do you think that there is something that is a major difference between what the media is saying about prospects and what teams' top 30 prospects are and what the teams themselves are evaluating in-house?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of consistency across media and often consistency from what the media would rank players compared to how an organization would rank players. Once you get past the top 10 or so, 8, 10, 15 players in an organization, that's where opinions start to diverge. And a lot of times publicly, where a player may be 15th for somebody, it could be 25th, could be 40th for somebody else. I think we're at the benefit at this point where teams have access to such an unbelievable amount of information. A lot of that has trickled down into the public sphere. Some of it hasn't, but I think one part of that would be that teams have a lot of information that the public may not have. A lot of it does look pretty similar, but we also probably feel like we understand our players. You know, we've grown up with them. We have opinions on them and reports, and people have been working with them for several years. So there's a lot that does go into it. And again, this is an art in a lot of ways, and we hope we make the right decisions, but you never know.
Absolutely. There is more unpredictability, I think you could say, with the Rule 5 draft and selections. The Orioles have taken 6 players since Mike Elias joined the front office. How would you evaluate how the Orioles have done there, getting some gems in a Tyler Wells and then having some prospects that you ultimately send back to their original teams?
Yeah, it is a calculated risk throughout, and we understand that there is a significant chance every time. If you look at the base rates around the league, players are sent back. What we're doing is we're comparing this use of a 40-man roster spot in December compared to our other avenues of player acquisition. And having any success, we consider a strong suit for us. Going back further with Anthony Santander, with Nestor Cortez even, and Ryan Flaherty, we do feel very proud of the work that we've done in Baltimore for years, but specifically the last several under this administration. And there are players that we've selected that have gone on to have major league ability as well. So the timing doesn't always match up. That's one of the variables that we try to bake in. And again, who knows what would have happened last year, but looking forward to this year. We're hopeful that this is another good use of a 40-man roster spot.
And for people who haven't watched the Rule 5 draft, and I don't blame you for not watching, it takes place in a conference room in winter meetings, but there isn't a long clock between picks. It's pretty much rapid fire as selections are made. As you head into this Rule 5 draft, do you feel like the team is going to wait to see how the board falls, or do you kind of have an idea of how many players you want to take in this Rule 5 draft?
We start out, there are a couple thousand eligible players, and we can whittle that down to maybe a couple hundred that we would say merit serious consideration. From there, we really dig in the way that we would on any player acquisition. And it would probably ends up being a couple dozen that we would really sink our teeth into, that we could really see being selected in, depending on the team need, depending on information in the year and how you want to move forward with your roster. From there, we probably have a list. As you say, it is rapid fire. So we'll have a list of 3, 4, 7 players that might be consideration. Some of those may go off the board before we have a chance to pick, or before we have a chance to pick on the second go around. And there's also then a threshold where we say this is probably not worth the gamble, and we'd rather roll with either our current mix or what we deem to be comparable players who might be available through other avenues.
And the Rule 5 draft, obviously you can take multiple players as mentioned. The Orioles have taken 3 players in the past, in previous years. This is a very young and exciting roster that the Orioles have right now, and probably competitions for 40-man roster spots may be more fierce come spring training than they have been in previous years. Do you feel like the Orioles, they have physical room on the roster right now, but do you think going into next year you have room to carry 2 or more Rule 5 draft players?
We'll see. It is definitely part of the calculus, and I think each year we will only select somebody if we think that that person has a significant, real chance of helping the team that year. I think it's very easy to, fall in a trap of saying, oh, we can hide this player and they'll be on the roster for the year, and then you can maintain that control over the player for several years. And we haven't felt like that is all that fruitful. So in the past, the players that we've selected, we felt had a chance to impact the team that following year and in the future. This year, that hasn't changed. What might have changed a little bit is that we feel good about where our roster stands now, and the bar might be a little higher to clear for what does help your big league team looking forward into 2023.
Gotcha. And having a more competitive team this year, having a pick that is much later than it would have been last year, would have had the number 1 pick, now you have a pick in the teens. How different is your approach to this Rule 5 draft as opposed to previous ones?
Yeah, it's a good problem to have if we're 17 instead of number 1, so we're happy about that. A lot of times, I will say, teams look at this very differently from one another, and I'm surprised every year that someone who gets picked, in the top 20, other teams may not have had in their top 50. There are names that get pulled out of everywhere. We probably pull names out of everywhere. Some of those names may have gone on to be, very long-term contributors at the big league level.
Nestor Cortez.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. We will let the chips fall, but our job at least is to provide the best information we can, rank them, figure out where that threshold is, where we're comfortable devoting the resources to the player or players or no player that we decide to take this year.
Mike, you've provided some excellent information on the Hot Stove Show as well. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Mike Snyder, the Orioles Director of Pro Scouting, joining us here on the Orioles Hot Stove Show.